Good morning and welcome to the Cooperative Credit Union Association's webinar series, Back to Business. Today we are focusing on the member experience, and for presenters today we have DJ Haskins, he is the Vice President of Strategy, and Amber Robinson, she is the Strategic Sales Executive at SilverCloud, which is a tech and data company located in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, that automates the creation, management, and delivery of support knowledge with institutions. And what's exciting about today's session is that and Amber have put together some statistics that we've been able to gather since this COVID crisis has happened to start to identify how consumer behavior has changed and how you'll be able to use that information in altering or adjusting your own procedures for the future to deliver a better experience for them all. A couple of housekeeping things first. I will be muting everyone. So when the Q&A starts, please unmute yourself so that we can hear you. And I know throughout the presentation, the presenters will be using the chat feature, which is located at the bottom of the screen. And so they'll ask for responses, but also feel free if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to share to include them in the chat. We'll be checking that frequently during the presentation. And so with that, I will turn it over to DJ and Amber. Thanks for being with us and for sharing your information with us.
Great. Thank you all. This is Amber, and thank you for the wonderful introduction, Bill. You know, we definitely understand how valuable everyone's time is, especially given this current scenario we're all in, and there's a lot going on. So DJ and I both thank you very much for joining us today as we talk about banking in the new normal and breaking down those service silos to help deliver a better experience. And Bill, I think you did an excellent job kind of giving a quick overview of SilverCloud. I like to talk about that a little bit at the beginning of these sessions, you know, really just to give you a feel for who we are here at SilverCloud, but also, you know, why we like to think that we're qualified to be talking about this with you today. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, we are a company based out of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, so not far from many of you, and we focus on helping credit unions deliver better support. We have two core products to do so. One that's more on the consumer facing side, your member facing automation, as well as an option for your employees. And we've been working with hundreds of credit unions over the last 14 years. So some of the trends and stats that we're going to be taking a look at today actually come from a lot of our own data. And in terms of what we're going to be covering, I know both DJ and I sit through a lot of webinars, and half the time I always kind of wonder in my mind, where are we going next with this? But this is kind of an outline of what we're going to cover. There's going to be three key parts to the conversation today. So we're going to walk through a little bit of some data around what we've seen in terms of what we've uncovered through the COVID experience, some of the impacts, as well as some of the opportunities that exist today that we've uncovered for credit unions. So we're going to talk through that a little bit. And then we have a gift for you. We're going to be providing some insight into a self-assessment that you guys we actually will give that to you towards the end of our session today. But we're going to walk you through how to use that self-assessment. And then DJ is going to share a little bit of what it's like to deliver that 360-degree member experience. So hopefully, you know, our goal is that you walk away from this session, you know, awake, engaged with some new insights and opportunities for improvement, and have that neat gift that you're welcome to leverage at your credit union. So we're going to go ahead and just jump right in now. So the last 12 or so, I think we're on 13 weeks, right, have been, they've been a little strange and a little scary and a little different for all of us. And I really don't want to belabor the point too much. I know it's what everybody's talking about these days, but I do really want to acknowledge the fact that, you know, what we've been living in has been a little different for all of us. And, you know, DJ, how is it being a new school teacher at your house?
Yeah, not good. Thankfully, it's summertime. I think I think my forehead grew a little bit and it got a little darker on the sides from the stress of being a 1st and 8th grade teacher.
No, yep, I bet, definitely. And you know, I think the impact from our perspective, unfortunately, in my opinion, was felt, the greatest financial institutions. So what we're taking a look at here on the screen is really just kind of a mini timeline of events of everything that happened over these last few weeks. You had to go from quickly pivoting to figure out how we can do things remotely, leveraging IT support. I have a friend that's a CIO up in Alaska. He's sending me pictures of piles of laptops, trying to coordinate the needs for those employees, setting up VPNs, HR working overtime, trying to figure out how to support employees with new benefits and safety and health and safety concerns, all the way through, to figuring out how we're going to best support our members through this crisis. How do we adjust our bank hours or set up appointments or make things more accessible from a digital perspective? And really that continues today. So we're seeing some of, the more longer term impacts of that now getting to, the reopening, which is great, and coming into the new norm a little bit. But there's been a lot of insights along the way. And actually, DJ, I listened to a podcast I think you were on earlier this week, and you had mentioned something about, if anything, the scenario that we've gone through has accelerated years worth of plans into, just a matter of weeks.
Absolutely.
And it's really given us the gift of a blueprint for identifying some of these opportunities and challenges. So, maybe you can take us through some of those insights here today.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you all, and thanks for joining. Amber and I are remote like most of you, so hopefully everything goes smoothly. But if we really step back, so we have some really cool data that we're going to share from a survey that we conducted with Strategic Contact, which is focusing on the credit unions and the impacts on the contact center. But just to kind of set the stage around this, and I'm going to simplify your very complicated industry down into this little chart on the left here. But essentially, if we think about banking, it's really about how do we perform transactions, whether that's deposits, opening new accounts, these types of things. How do we actually, what are the products and services that we're selling to our members or to prospective members? And then how are we supporting and servicing those? And essentially, as Amber alluded to, we just compressed years of change into weeks and months, right? And in thinking through that, we've kind of siloed as an industry. We've kind of siloed. Oh, you come in here to do that. You use this to do that. You leverage this to do this. And essentially, what we've really done is just compress this into how do we do this without actually having people come into our branch, and how are they leveraging technology? How are we leveraging our contact center to do these transactions, to answer the high volume technology questions, especially as people were using online or mobile banking potentially for the first time? How are we supporting these common banking questions? I think that gets overlooked a lot, where it's 70% of these routine questions: routing number, account number, do you offer notary services, these types of things. And then product questions. We've seen a huge impact, a huge spike in mortgages and refinancing as rates hit an all-time low in mid-March, and they're still low. There's just huge data points around that: online account opening, these types of things. So as we go through that, this just kind of sets the stage. And Amber, if you want to go up ahead one slide. Really the three big impacts, that we're hearing, and I'm sure there's been other sides on the IT perspective and supporting all that, but the impact on the contact center. So this stat comes from Cornerstone. The average was 36% increase in call volumes. And just to kind of set the stage a little bit on that, we've all lived through, or you've all lived through, core conversions, mobile conversions, maybe a merger, and those high trigger events that just kind of shake the credit union to the core. And this quote was, I think it provides good context there. It was the same. The impact was the same as when they did a core conversion. If you want to skip ahead, and and the next one is really the impact on digital banking. So we did a survey with a couple hundred different institutions just to ask, what was the impact on digital banking? And 37% said it was very significant. Whatever 37 minus 89, I guess that's 52% said, it was definitely increased. The other thing here is that web traffic. I just read an article yesterday on the Financial Brand with a big survey that was done, that March and April were the highest web traffic months on bank and credit union websites. So just beyond digital banking, but also leveraging your website for some of the information that I kind of referenced in that first slide. And then finally, the impact on staff. So this stat comes from Strategic Contact, and we'll get into this a little bit more. But 82% of you had to shift staff around. to be able to support the contact center with the increases of calls coming in, and then no longer having, the branches be open, or maybe it was just drive-through, or maybe it was by appointment only with a skeleton staff. So 82% of credit unions, of the 126 that were interviewed, have had to shuffle staff around, right? Maybe it's work from home. So doing all these different types of things, you're having your staff do different types of things. So if you want to skip ahead, Amber, and really, so this is some data that we just received last week. So we sponsored with Lori Buckland out of Oregon and Strategic Contact, where they interviewed 126 credit union and banking credit union leaders to really understand what was the challenge. So we've, as Amber talked about, we're starting to get a little bit of a blueprint here around where do we go from here, and what is this impact going to be? So just some good data points here around, what was that impact from your peers' perspective? So some of the coronavirus challenges is, how do you train contact center staff quickly? As we've 82% of you had to shift people into these roles. PPP, stimulus, all of these new types of questions that were coming in, things that didn't exist before this. How do you actually train? How do you educate quickly? Getting technology in place, whether it's VPN or laptops, staff shortages. My wife oversees a contact center for John Hancock. They had an outsourced contact center in the Philippines that was completely shut down. Everybody's dealing with this staff shortage of how do we actually support this remotely. Policy, regulatory concerns. But this one's really interesting. So that we showed you that stat of 36%, which came from Cornerstone. But this is actually your peers. These are credit unions in the United States. So 93.5% of you had at least a 20% increase in contact center volumes. Some were much higher, some were, a little bit lower, but we definitely felt this. So we'd love to hear, if anyone's willing to drop anything into the chat, we'd just love to hear any of your experiences with contact centers. Did it increase, or do you have any vignettes that you'd want to share just around, the impact that you felt from, especially maybe on your member experience side? So while people are typing that, Amber, if you want to skip ahead so we don't have dead.
Yep.
And then, so how do credit unions actually support this, right? 82% of you had to convert other staff. You had to use managers or supervisors to get back on the phones. That was something that my wife was dealing with, a lot of consternation from some of her employees that were supervisors saying, why do I have to get on, live chat, supporting all these different types of things, these things. So just some really good data points here around like what was happening. But here's the big thing, right? So as credit unions, you all pride yourself on the member experience, and you all have service levels, and there's a variety of service levels that you manage or that you look at daily. Here's just two. There was 4 or 5 different data points that Lori surveyed on. Average speed of answer, the goal was 52 seconds. Performance today post-COVID is almost double that, 111 seconds. So what is the impact on the member experience happening there? And then also, as you're trying to actually get these service levels down, what is the impact of the ability to have a proactive conversation and really deliver that experience that you all pride yourselves on? And then abandonment rates, average goal 6%, almost double, at 10%. So, 10% of your members, or the members in this 126 credit union survey, had a 10% abandonment rates, meaning that they just couldn't get through and they were frustrated and they left with a frustrating experience. So we didn't get anybody in our last question, but if anybody wants to share any of the impacts on their service levels, it would, or just anything that they were noticing. But here's the thing, as we talk about just the member experience, and the impact on that, the fundamental thing that shifted here with COVID-19 and the big impact is that we think a lot about the member, and our customer, but think about the employee. We've just shifted how our members interact with us, and we've also shifted how our employees are interacting with each other, but also with the members, right? We've changed worker behavior. And some of the stats, if you want to skip ahead, Amber, this came out from the Financial Brand. They did a big survey with a third party. And what they found was that 72% of financial institutions, so banks and credit unions, are recognizing that there's a skill gap in their current workforce, right? Because we've hired for these different types of positions, and now we're kind of, I don't want to say universal banker, because I know that's, that's kind of something that people either have pros or cons to, but we're really starting to go down this idea of how are our employees going to be able to handle more and more things. So influx of technology questions. Are they experts at supporting, are you in Chrome or on Edge? Are they experts in understanding all of the nuances of mobile banking and online banking? Are they experts in being able to solve problems that might be related to overdrafts or related to the whole host of support and service questions that are coming in? And because of this is kind of forced, again, it's given us that blueprint, it's forced us to recognize the need that we might need to do some staff training. Because essentially what we've done is we've just compressed years of change into months. There's a great quote that I read. It was actually a comment to an article planning our COVID-19 response. And it actually came from a comment from a credit union leader. It didn't say which institution, but it sums it up perfectly. What he said was, we all knew this was coming. And we all knew that, work from home was going to be a reality. We knew the increase of digital. We knew that how we interact with our members at the macro level was going to change. We just didn't know it was going to change this fast. We thought we'd have 5 to 6 years to really map this out. So the question that the open-ended question here that I would really leave for you all is this: how do you support this without a major technology overhaul? You've all invested time and money into the current platforms that you have. And yes, if we could snap our fingers and have this set up and have this set up, but how do you make what you have today work for you, right? And then number 2, how do you remove the friction from the member experience? So how are we actually removing that friction so that we're delivering the member experience? So want to go to the next slide, Amber, because this is kind of what your peers are saying that they're going to be doing. And this is related to supporting members. So I know that at the macro level, they're probably talking about other things, but really it comes down to we're going to increase home agents or contact center representatives. We need to offer more self-service to our members so that we're not relying on them. It's just not sustainable for the call volumes to stay where they are. We're going to acquire more technology to support this agility. And we need to improve our knowledge management. We need to make our agents and our employees effective as possible. So when they are dealing with all these different types of questions, we're able to provide the answers that they're looking for. And more importantly, they're able to deliver. You can train on delivering the member experience that you want and not training on route memorization where they have to know 373 different ways to support mobile banking. On average, we see between 4,000 and 5,000 unique policies and procedures for a credit union. There's no way they can remember all of those. If you want to jump ahead. And then this is an interesting statistic too from BAI that 83% of financial institutions, both banks and credit unions, they feel this sense of urgency to implement digital initiatives. And they say that it's a fear of falling behind because they think that the consumers or the members want more digital self-service, which I would agree with. But I think the thing that they didn't answer here, the thing that when they alluded to this 83%, I think it's more about the sustainability. You can't sustain the levels that you're going at from a cost perspective and from a member experience. Because here's the reality. You all already have mobile and online banking. It could be better. There's no doubt about that. And yes, you need to have it on your roadmap to constantly be bringing in new features and functionality. I get that. But the majority of you have it. The majority of you have digital account opening technology now. We know that that's a huge opportunity for a lot of credit unions. We've seen spikes. There's a Google Trend stat out there that shows that online account opening searches have doubled since this all started. We know that you need to be doing this. We see that they're up 30 to 40% on average across. And the majority of you have this software, right? Yes, it requires, it requires a wet signature, or maybe it requires in person for ID verification. But the biggest thing that I think, the biggest opportunity for credit unions, and I think the data starts to tell this story, is that you have a siloed member experience. And the assessment that we want to take you through is really going to show you kind of where are there opportunities so that you can leverage the technology that you already have today. You can leverage the staff that you already have today, but you can kind of create this experience. So before we get to that, I just have 2 quick slides. So when we talk about siloed member experience, what do we mean? And here's the thing, as consumers, us all on this call, we're all consumers. Our expectations of what we can do and how we interact with brands is formed by Netflix and Google and Amazon. It's formed by these digital only brands, the brands that we use every single day, right? But they have a huge advantage over banks and credit unions, and that is that they really only have to support 2 different channels: website, maybe there's an app in the website, and then mobile. Yeah, they have support, live chat or phone number. Good luck trying to find it, or good luck trying to get through. I don't know if anybody's ever done anything with Google. It's a challenge to get through. Because here's the thing, and this is where I really am empathetic to credit unions, but I also see a huge opportunity to differentiate you, is that you have 6+ channels that you need to support, right? You have your branch and your drive-through. You have ATMs. I know ITMs have been really popular throughout all this. You have your contact center. You have your website, online banking, mobile banking, and now you're getting into things like live chat and messaging. So you have all these different channels that you need to support. Our expectations are formed by these the Googles and the Amazons and the Netflix, but they're really doing entertainment type stuff, right? We're talking about money, we're talking about finances, we're talking about some of life's biggest stressors. We're talking about things that it's not just, oh, my new glasses, my new fake glasses, which my daughter ordered the other day, or they're not going to be here till Wednesday. What the heck? We're talking about, like, my rent is due next week. How am I going to make this happen? So just want to give you a quick vignette as we go through this, because again, to come back to that idea of transactions and products and support and service, just kind of 4 scenarios or 4 personas. So we have Jean. So hopefully you can see those gray lines. Jean's a typical credit union banker, right? She might use mobile banking to check, has my balance, or has this cleared or not cleared. She uses online banking, same type of thing, right? If she's at work or she's in front of her desktop or laptop, she's going to go in, check it, make sure, oh, my money was deposited, those things. But the majority of the high value things, she's going to go to the branch to do that, right? She wants to come in to make a deposit. She wants to come in if she has questions around, products or any of that type of thing. That's just her style. And next we have Bob. So Bob is probably a little bit more of a Luddite. Yeah, he might use mobile banking a little bit. But if Bob has questions, he wants to talk to someone. He's just going to call. He doesn't want to drive in. He just wants to call. And the reality is, yeah, he'll use the ATM to do some transactions or get cash. But primarily, he's going to call. And the reality is that that's probably not going to change, right? That's just the way that he likes to do business. He's talking about money. He prefers to talk to somebody. And then we have Michelle. And Michelle is really a digital native, right? Her whole expectations and experience of your credit union are formed on mobile banking. To her, that is the branch. And yeah, she might use live chat, or she might use SMS text for some things, but she probably doesn't necessarily want to. She wants to be able to resolve issues on her own. And her whole impression of your credit union is formed by her mobile experience. And then we have Peter. So Peter's kind of like Jean. In some regards, Peter's going to use online banking. He might call. He might come into the branch. He's just not 100% confident in the digital stuff. Sometimes we're talking about money. He wants to talk to people, whether that's in face or in person. And I think the key takeaway here is that how do you, as credit unions, support these different personas and these different members? Because our expectations are that we can go seamlessly across these channels and get the information that we need. We can start and stop in one and go to another one. And that's the challenge, especially for a lot of the small to mid-tier credit unions, is how do you deliver that? So we want to walk through now, and I'll turn it back over to Amber to kind of walk you through kind of how can you assess your member experience through these different channels.
Yeah. Thank you, DJ. I know I just went through this with,
That's right. Yeah.
My own family. So, I have 2 little ones, and we were set up for daycare, and obviously that fell through. So we ended up getting a check back, and my husband the other day was like, oh man, I gotta figure out if our credit union's open so I can swing by and deposit this check. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You can do that on your phone now, but it just shows you, even in the same household, we have very different preferences in terms of how we bank. So
yeah, maybe we should update Peter to Bo.
It should probably say Bo. Yep. So this is a copy of the assessment that, like I mentioned towards the end, if you guys want to let us know you'd like a copy, we'd be happy to get this in your hands. But we're going to be walking you through this tool to figure out how you can use this at your credit unions. And there's essentially 4 different sections that we're going to be taking a look at to help support your current approach to service. In these 4 areas, we're going to go into a little bit more detail, but essentially it's all about, first, helping people find the right information in the first place. And then from there, how do you make it easy for them to complete what it is that they're looking to do, and making it equally accessible regardless of the communication channel. So whether they're on mobile or online or calling into the call center, and empowering your staff so they're giving out the same exact answers as what your members would be finding out on those other channels, really creating one single source of truth. So let's talk about navigational beacons a little bit first. And, you know, we do have to recognize that users have different ways that they're going to navigate, and that they're likely going to look for information. And, you know, the stat, DJ, that you just shared about the Google Trends, you know, we're finding that consumers are starting to go to Google first rather than directly to your website to look for some of this information. So provided you've got your local SEO working, they're probably going to be hitting your product pages before even coming to your homepage. So think about providing that experience like giving your members a big hug with self-service, no matter where they are. You know, we're providing multiple entry points to access this information, whether it be through search. So typically our recommendation is make that search obvious. Most credit unions I consult with, oftentimes it might be a small little, you know, magnifying glass icon that I typically see on the website. Make it easy, almost as if there was a greeter when you're walking into a branch. Think of it in that way. And providing contextual support on those pages, even on your contact us pages that we're going to be walking through in a moment. So, you know, one thing to add here is this is kind of a fun test for you to go through. When you're taking a look at that search experience, the first recommendation that I would have for you is take a look at, you know, what is that experience across platforms, and is it consistent? Meaning, you know, if they're looking for an answer to a question on your website, do they have the ability to search and find that same answer, that same experience on your online or mobile banking channels? And we have a fun little litmus test here. You can go back and perform a couple of searches on your own. We have 3 different areas we would recommend that you take a look at. So the first one being ask a simple, basic, you know, type of a question. We answered almost 15 million different questions for our credit union consumers last year, and routing number is almost always in the top 3 search queries. So that's a good one to go and take a look at. And don't just take a look at, okay, you know, did we provide that answer? First, just make sure it was easy to find. But when you provided that answer, what type of additional guidance did you give to those credit union members at that time? You know, they're asking this number for a reason. They're looking to do something. Let's make sure we provide a more proactive experience to get them set up for success. Another great question to start taking a look at are more of those technology related questions. You know, I hear a lot of contact centers are more like IT help desks some days. So, you know, things like resetting password and signing up for online banking, those are really good tests to take a look at how easy it is to find a response to that, and what's the quality of that answer when it comes through. And third, the last one that we have here is in terms of cross-selling opportunities, member growth opportunities. Most credit unions I speak with, that's the current strategy. So if you're focused on a growth strategy, how easy is it for you to cross-sell and acquire those new members? So go ahead and perform some searches and take a look at that. Now, continuing in the same vein around those navigational beacons, because we have this wealth of data that we get to sit on here at SilverCloud, you know, we've been able to see that the average search query is 1.4 words long. Not even 2 words long. So that just goes to show you that oftentimes when people are searching for things, the intent behind what they're looking for can vary very drastically based on that. And the example we see here on the screen is the example of online banking. A consumer might just type in online banking, but there's really kind of 3 different areas they may be looking for information around. You know, maybe it's more of questions about, how do I physically do something, whether it be registering for online banking or the reset password example we were talking about, maybe transferring funds. There are things they're looking to do related to online banking. Additionally, they may be looking to see, you know, what are the benefits of using online banking? Maybe I've been a traditional, you know, I've been Jean, where I've always just used the branch, and now I'm really starting to get interested about what are some of the other things that are available to me that I didn't know was available through my credit union. So these types of no questions. And then lastly, there are the go questions. Maybe they're just looking to get quickly to online banking, drive me to that place to be able to do business with you. So really
think very accommodating for her.
Yep, providing that additional information.
I'm like, the whole fair thing scared me.
Having that contextual information there on those pages, proactively serving up those common questions so that we know when they're typing in online banking, we're addressing the do, the no, the go all at the same time. And then moving into this last thought on your navigational beacons is we know that the number 2 reasons that banking consumers are typically coming to your website, first is to log into online banking, but the number 2 reason is to get to your contact us page. And the reason for that is because they're looking for those telephone numbers. We have we've conditioned members to know that this is the only way and the only place that they can go to get that information. So when they visit your page, rather than just serving up some of those telephone numbers, for those that would prefer to self-serve and not necessarily have to call in, think about setting it up in a way where you can proactively serve up the ability to self-serve and ask a question, maybe present some of the more frequently asked questions based on your membership's activity right here before necessarily having to call in. And that's a great tool because we know that 54% of the majority of your support questions are actually coming in after hours. In terms of product related questions like mortgage rates and mortgage information, almost 70% of that's coming in on Sundays alone. And those are the times when you don't necessarily have somebody there and available to support them. So to capture that engagement, think of ways of providing those navigational beacons where they are. And then contextually serving that up to help increase adoption. So, we're talking about now providing that help. We made it easy for them to find. Now, how do we set them up for success so they can start doing what they're looking to do, including those calls to action so that you can increase adoption of a lot of these services and remove the friction in that experience. Take me to a place to help me out. I really like this example of provided guided tutorials, especially for those high volume questions like the reset passwords, the transfers, setting up bill pay, maybe even registering for online banking. These are really great ways to provide that in-app self-service experience to ensure that they're properly adopting these channels and getting the most value out of that membership with you.
And those and once you have those two, you can really start to use those for a lot of other things. Think about onboarding, right? As you're onboarding new members, now you actually have the content to push to them so that you're getting adoption of it, but you're not getting the calls of how do I do this again? So they have multiple uses too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like the example you had spoken about earlier, DJ, the way we're doing business going forward and the way people are going to interact with these branches as we're looking at reopenings is going to be vastly different. And so, make it easy for them to be able to schedule those branch appointments. I was helping my mom out with an example the other day where she was literally going to the drive-through to talk to a teller because she couldn't get a hold of her institution. And she should have been using a credit union, but that's a whole other conversation. Providing that contextual experience, especially around some of these more thematic areas we're noticing due to COVID around support people are looking for with card replacements. Where do I go to find a notary to get something notarized or access cashier's checks and processing loans, things of that nature. And then lastly, like DJ had mentioned, a lot of you have made some significant investments in your digital channels, whether that be your new online member applications or account opening applications, registering for online banking, things of that nature. And so providing that contextual support, this example, we're showing a bit of a chatbot helping them throughout the process, but you're going to see much lower abandonment rates, especially on the more complicated areas of those application processes, maybe where they're wondering, why are you asking for this information and where could I even find this, helping support them throughout that process. Because we know the reality is they're not likely going to come back and complete that application once they've left. So supporting them right there where they are. And then also, I'm curious for those of you that want to type it in the chat, I'd love to hear if any of you on the call today are providing any type of support, whether it be, the ability to have maybe a quick link or a live chat, or maybe even the ability to search within your mobile channels. Because as we've seen mobile adoption really grow throughout this time period, this is the ideal channel for those users like Michelle, where this is their branch and this is where they're interacting with you on a daily basis to really break down that silo and provide the same experience to her on these channels, just as she would within your other channels, and really taking this experience beyond just the ability to do transactions and really be there for me when I need that financial guidance and support. And so that would be one of our recommendations. Most mobile application vendors do have the ability to drop these quick links in there and really leverage the ability to do so to be able to provide that optimal experience. This is kind of a common mistake or a missed opportunity is probably a better way of wording it in terms of delivering that type of an experience. So most of the time when I'm going through these customized assessments with my credit unions, we take a look at the mobile app experience or the online banking experience, assuming that I'm a member and I'm, struggling with how to do something. I might go looking for some help, and typically these are the only two options available to me at that time. I either can email support and wait for somebody to get back to me, or I've got a number there to call. And those are typically the only two options that I have available. Or for some institutions that have chosen, to adopt things like live chat, they've gone that far. However, the usage of that then explodes. We know, almost 70% of your members' engagement happens through these channels. And so when those volumes start to increase, not only is that adding a lot more friction to your members' experience, I can only imagine the type of friction that's creating for your employees in the contact center that are now responding to this and feeling like, there's more to keep up with at that point.
And Amber, so my wife, as I told you all, works for John Hancock and oversees the contact center for 3 of their different business lines. And yesterday I was sitting at my table working, and she's in her office, and I overheard her. This literally happened yesterday. I overheard her on a call to her team. They had just implemented live chat to support their customers better throughout all this stuff. They were all excited about it. And the statistics came back that it takes 3 times longer to resolve a live chat than it does a call. And basically what I heard her say is, are you kidding me? What are we going to do? Right? Because we want to be able to provide this for the Michelles, maybe the Bobs of the world. But the reality is it takes on average 3 times. And actually we've seen some data that, it shows actually 3 to 4% for 3 to 4 times for financial institutions to actually resolve a live chat than it does for a call. And yes, it might be more convenient, and yes, it might be the ability to do it right for mobile. And yeah, you can manage a few at a time, but just think about that. Now we're going from 2 to 3 minutes potentially down up to 12, 13 minutes to actually resolve a live chat. And how do you solve that when the majority of them are just simple answers that you probably could have resolved through self-service?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure you didn't give her any advice on what to do there, DJ, right?
No, she runs the house. I only spoke when I'm allowed to. Spoken when I'm spoken to.
It's true though, and we are finding that quite a bit. And Marissa, thank you for sharing that you're using some of those FAQs today. I'd love to talk a bit more about how you guys are leveraging those and maybe some opportunities really for you guys to even be extending that experience. But here's a list of a lot of the common mobile banking providers out there. I don't know if any of you guys are using some of these today, but most often they allow for links within the app. You can do an in-app browser experience, and that would leverage the ability to take advantage of the existing systems and technologies you have in place. It doesn't require an entire overhaul to be able to deliver this type of an experience on those channels.
And a lot of times too, just to start, you could really just create a support page, maybe it's silvercloudinc.com/mobile, and just start to put some of those top questions in there, and then provide links back to the product pages. We know, 30% on average of the queries are product related. We know 30, 35% depending on range for technology, just start to anticipate what that was. So, in theory, you could build a page really, really quickly and then put analytics on it to see what people are actually leveraging and then start to make it better. But that's something, just a basic link you could add in there relatively quickly.
Yep, absolutely. That's a very good recommendation, because like for the Michelles that are on there and they're, you know, paying their rent or, you know, doing something through bill pay, maybe setting up an additional account, while they're in that application, they might also be kind of interested at taking advantage of some of these low interest rates and potentially refinancing their vehicle or their home. And if while they're in that application, you have the ability to drive them back to the mobile version of your website, quickly link them over there, that's definitely going to drive a lot of engagement.
And a lot of the ones that you just showed actually allow in-app. So yes, they're visiting your website, but they don't even realize it. So they've never really fully left the mobile app. So to them, it feels seamless.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely. And then lastly, you know, how does that bubble up to your employee experience, and how are they providing that single source of the truth and fully aware of that same experience and answer that we're delivering out on your digital channels to your members? You know, when they have to support them and those calls are coming in, how do they quickly find that information, and how is that staying in sync with what we're telling them out on the digital experience? And that could be the most, probably the largest silo or breakdown that I typically see, is that an employee, you know, will struggle very much like the members sometimes do with finding this information. So make it easy for that employee to go and find this information. This is an example of what we often see. There might be an intranet or a share drive or something that they can use, and they'll perform a search, and there's just so much data coming back. You shared that earlier, DJ. You know, we see thousands and thousands of pages worth of policy and procedure information that an employee has to sift through. And it's all very scenario based oftentimes when they're on the phone with a member, or perhaps engaging with them face to face. And so really taking that information and making it easier to find. And then when they do find it, make it easy to follow. So I think, you know, a lot of organizations that have done a really wonderful job of documenting all of their procedures, most of the time it's the usability of this content that is the bottleneck here. It could be a 37-page long PDF document that an employee is trying to scroll through, while they likely have many other screens up right now or systems that they're in, and servicing a member at the same time. So really think of ways to be presenting this information in really small, easy to read units that are easy to follow, so that whether that employee has been on the front lines for 20 years or 20 days, they can be just as knowledgeable and as confident that they're delivering the right experience every time. So just kind of wrapping it up in terms of this assessment, these are the 4 areas that we would recommend that you kind of go through and evaluate at your organization. So taking a look at how quickly can we surround your members and your employees with those navigational beacons, make it easy for them to do what they're trying to do, deliver that consistently across every channel, and really empower your staff to deliver the same experience. So DJ, do you want to walk us through a little bit of what maybe that 360-degree experience could look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, essentially, we'd kind of walk through that self-assessment, but here's why this all matters, right? At the end of the day, and we understand that there's a lot of areas for, you know, that a lot of areas for investment within credit unions, and there's a lot of other things, security and fraud and all those types of things, and that you all need to be worrying about. But as we think about how do we deliver a consistent member experience, and we think about the Jeans and the Bobs and the Michelles and the Peter in the world, and just think about all the way that your different members are interacting with you. And then also think about the employee impact with trying to get employees to be able to function in a different way than they were pre-COVID, in terms of, you know, maybe it was siloed that, oh, the contact center handles this and the branch handles this, and we have a department that handles this, where now that's kind of all been flipped on its head a little bit. So how do you make it when the Bobs call that they're able to have a great member experience, or when Michelle maybe is forced to chat with you because something has needed to be escalated, that you're able to get to deliver that member experience and really get that first call resolution or first interaction resolution handled in an appropriate manner. So when we think about this, you know, the key to all of this really comes down to knowledge. And what we mean by knowledge is, how are we able to deliver consistent information across the member digital things how are we able to make it usable both for, when we think about consistency, it's not just for your employees and your member, it's for everyone, right? So it's consistent where people are being confident, they know that they have the right information and it's usable, meaning that we can find it, we can follow it, and that they're confident. So we're not training on route memorization, we're training on experience for our employees. And then also for our members, that we're just empowering self-service so that they're able to say, I've looked up Notary, and Notary was actually an interesting one. There was an article that we found from a credit union in the Southwest that was the #1 people were coming into the branch during COVID or scheduling appointments was for Notary, right? So how do we make it just super easy so that they're not forced to call, so that your agents aren't spending their time answering basic questions, that they can actually answer the Bobs of the world that want to call, or maybe they want to deal with the Peters and the Michelles and the Jeans of the world that they've called for an escalation, right? Because we want to remove friction and just make this really, really easy. So as we start to think about how do we break down the service silos so that we can start to do this, knowledge is really going to be at the core of all of this, because we have to be able to manage all of that information, whether it's on the member side or whether it's on the employee side, centrally managing it so that we're providing consistent access to knowledge, right? So it's consistent. We're following the best practices that Amber walked through, from how do we make it easy to find, but not just providing the answer, but really anticipating what they're looking to do next with those best practices. That we're providing the different interfaces, whether, I think, Amber, you showed search, you showed contextual FAQs, you showed chatbot, and we showed kind of some of the other things. How are we able to deploy that across so that Jean, Peter, Michelle, Bob, that they can all find that the style wherever they are, they can find it? And then how are we using data and analytics to really start to drive the improvement of that? So we're able to centrally manage, we're able to follow those best practices to make information easy to find, engaging, and then we can deploy it. So if you want to skip ahead, and making information easy to find. So a lot of chatter out there about AI. A lot of it is kind of overwhelming or seems scary. It seems kind of like the Matrix-y in some regards with machine learning. But really thinking about AI in the perspective of how do you interpret what the member or what your employee is asking for, right? So Amber said 1.4 words, employees. So really using, natural language processing as a segment of AI to really understand the intent. If I type in open, do I mean open account? Do I mean when are you open? And there's hundreds of different scenarios there, right? And then providing those multiple entry points across the different platforms. So, a lot of times one of the challenges that we see is that, marketing owns the website, retail owns online banking, IT owns mobile banking, whatever it might be, and they're kind of siloed, right? So we've said, hey, no, when you're in mobile banking, you do these things and you come to the website to do these things. But how do we make information easy to find so that it's kind of that fabric that ties them across? It all starts with making it find, and then engaging. So how are we not just answering the question, but providing additional information and making it actionable? Things like schedule an appointment, things like guided tutorials or conversations that kind of pull them through, and then just simple links, right? Maybe they want to apply online, maybe they want to register, maybe they want to make a mobile deposit, send it. And then on the employee side is how do we start to pull it out of those 37-page documents just to make it really easy for, maybe it's the branch person that was transferred over to the contact center is dealing with a whole host of different questions. How do we make it really, really easy for them to be able to go step by step by step, to be confident that they can deliver, to ensure that they're doing it the right way so they're not having to come back, we're getting the resolution, they're getting the member experience. At the end of the day, if you want to just go back real quick, sorry, Amber. At the end of the day, think about it like this. So we talked about Amazon as one of those digital first. And just think about your experience when you're on Amazon. They are anticipating everything and they're putting all of the information right in front of you so you can make a really easy, informed decision, not just from buying with, all the specs and the images and potentially videos and the reviews and all that stuff, but they're also trying to upsell you, right? So it's the idea of people also bought these things. Oh, this is a great bundle, right? How do we start to make our experiences for our member and our employees like that Amazon experience? And then if you want to jump ahead to manage, the idea of managing is like to deliver a consistent experience, this has to be centrally managed, right? You have to remove the inconsistencies and you have to be able to ensure compliance. So you guys are in a regulated industry. People are going to want to be able to say, what did we show on May for rates? What did we show for the answer for these types of things? Or what was our procedure for opening a new account via contact centers in May? So how do we actually do that? And it all starts with the idea of centrally managing this. And we talk a lot about that on the employee side, but it's equally as critical on the member side, so that if you want to deliver that 360-degree experience for Michelle and Peter and Bob and Jean, that whether it's on mobile, online, whether it's through their website, or whether it's even through onboarding emails or those types of things, that it's all the same answer. And especially thinking about what we just lived through the last 12 weeks with things changing so quickly with PPP and stimulus and maybe deposit limits or maybe some of the forbearance, maybe our processes were changing. How do we essentially manage that? So if you want to jump ahead, Amber, so that as we deploy that across, it's being consistent, right? That's how we start to really remove friction from the member experience, by taking those out of silos, because this is really where I think the future for a lot of the credit union industry is this idea: how do we quickly deploy information across these different channels, right? Through these different interfaces, through chatbot and through search and through these contextual FAQ widgets. But just thinking beyond that, like how could we then deploy that to an onboarding email? And we've all heard open banking and we've all heard transformation, and it really starts with this idea, right? But before we can get there, let's just start with how do we start to deliver these through the channels that we have now? Because ultimately, and just a side note on that last one, sorry if you want to go back, Amber, sorry, just a side note on this, like the opportunities here are really endless. Like the stuff that Google is doing now with their search results is unbelievable. If you were to Google XYZ credit union and you have it set up, you can schedule an appointment right from the Google search results. You can start to do messaging through the Google search results, right? We know, as Amber, you mentioned, how much people are starting at Google, right? So now imagine actually being able to deploy this content. And this, I realize we're talking future state, but just to start to think about how does this member experience really start to go to the next level? It's all about, if we have the ability to centrally manage, now we can, the options for deploying this are really endless. So, sorry. So, because at the end of the day, the reality is we've just been given a blueprint of what the future looks like, and we just condensed 5 years into months. And we really have to start to think about how are we going to deliver this member experience? And it's not just for the member, it's for the sustainability of the credit unions and the sustainability of how do we empower our employees, so that they're not leaving and getting frustrated, but they're thriving and that you're being more efficient. And it starts with improved member experience with self-service. It's going to lead to more technology adoption without reduced calls. So those little vignettes and just getting people to use that. So Bo now knows he can use mobile banking, Amber. So we're getting better product adoption, especially in your digital channels. There's stats out there that talk about, the average abandonment rate in banking is 82%. I've heard this, I'm sure. I don't know how it might be different for all institutions. 82% of people that start an account online, they stop, they abandon. And ultimately, so we can have improved service levels so that your credit union now is being more operationally efficient. So we can kind of ride this wave out of the impacts of COVID and into this kind of quote unquote new normal. So with that said, Amber, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, DJ. I know this is always a fun dynamic with everybody doing the webinars remotely. So thank you, everybody, for dealing with me as we kind of jump through some slides here. Now we're just going to chat and wrap things up with a little bit about SilverCloud and give you a little bit of feel for what it is that we do. So our consumer support offering that we've been alluding to is a great tool to help you. While a lot of these insights are things you could take advantage of on your own, absolutely. We are definitely here to help support a lot of those high volume questions as well, drive higher technology adoption, increase those product conversions, deploy it across all those channels so you don't need to worry about technically making that happen. And we can do it all in 30 days. We've got a great quote here from Franklin Mint. They've been a long time client of SilverCloud's and just started leveraging our chatbot and saw, that was instrumental to getting almost 3 times the amount of inquiries out to and answers out to their members that necessarily would have gone to the call center previously. And then our employee support offering is all about just making that same information easy for your employees to find. So empowering your staff so they feel confident that they can be the financial expert, quickly find this information that they trust. And I think that's probably the most important piece. While they could find it today, do they trust the information? So they're not bogging down other employees and subject matter experts, and have that audit history with some specific tools built just for banking, just for your industry, and making that all live within 90 days. And Sharon View is another great example of that, where they were able to really improve a lot of their operational efficiencies and reduced quite a few exceptions on some more complicated processes by breaking that down. And we really think of this whole scenario that we've been talking through today of breaking down those silos, delivering better self-service is more of a process than a project, than anything else. It's something you can continuously chip away at, but really focusing on starting in those areas where you're going to relieve the most pressure. And that would be our recommendation to everyone here. You know, where are you feeling the most pain? And this may not be the same for every credit union, but most of the time I often find that means starting with, you know, dropping this into the mobile experience first. That's where a lot of your consumers are struggling with adopting these digital technologies. You know, have that content available, get that live within 30 days, and then really look at improving the experience from there. Use that data to your advantage. Make recommendations and optimize the experience based on that. And it's from there that you can look at expanding it, whether that be to other digital channels, maybe including some additional interfaces like a chatbot interface, or maybe even an employee support option. That would be our recommendation here. We've got a neat case study actually of this COVID timeline. This is a credit union, about a $300 million credit union up in Maine. Who had started using SilverCloud at the beginning of the year. They had a mobile banking conversion slated for February. So right before things got really hairy for all of us. And you can just see that as they dropped in additional interfaces of self-service along this timeline here leading up to the beginning of May, that their baseline for self-service just increased. You know, so we have it on the website, and we're answering a decent amount of inquiries for them. Obviously, it's going to spike when you go through a major conversion like updating mobile banking. But you notice after the spike and after we dropped it into that channel, that baseline increased by almost 100%, and then up again when we dropped in the chatbot. So it's really showing that evolution of engaging with these additional interfaces and more of a phased approach to help increase automation and optimizing that experience. These are a couple of great examples I'd suggest you go and take a look at. Feel free to poke around on their experience as well. Piedmont Advantage just recently went through an acquisition right before this as well. So they were pretty quick. I think we got them up and live in almost less than 30 days, I believe. But they're, you know, some great use cases, great credit unions to take a look at and really learn from quite a bit. We also have some additional resources available on SilverCloud's website, so feel free to go and check those out. There's some great helpful guides and ebooks available that can help you out with this experience. And I think, you know, to wrap things up, if you were to leave with one thing today, it's just the fact that we realize, you know, banking has changed. That is a fact. And it's consistency and it's knowledge that's really going to allow for self-service and how you're going to be able to operate efficiently. So I thank you all for sticking around. I really hope that this was informative for all of you and engaging. I mentioned that we're giving away a copy of the self-assessment. I saw a couple people request a copy through the chat, but alternatively, if you would like a customized assessment, we're also giving that away. We'd be happy to walk through a one-on-one conversation in terms of what you're noticing today and give you some recommendations based on that. Or you're more than welcome to just, you know, take us up on a conversation to learn a bit more about how SilverCloud can help support your credit union. So feel free to respond in the chat with any of those. And, you know, I thank you for your time. I certainly look forward to meeting you all soon. And DJ, I don't know if there's anything else that you'd like to add for the group.
Yeah, no, we appreciate your time on this on this Thursday morning. And I think, you know, I'll just leave you with a quick story. So I sit on the board for a local community bank, and sorry, it's not a credit union, but and we had talking to the CEO. This is pre-COVID, so February. What he said was, we were talking about digital self-service, and when I asked him, you know, what the plans were, he said, "Oh, we're gonna roll out online account opening." and that's our self-service strategy. And I think that is really the mentality within the industry for a lot of banking leaders is there's that next silver bullet, which is going to solve all the problems. Oh, if we just do this, this will fix it. And I think if anything, the takeaway here would just be thinking broadly about how do Gene, Peter, Michelle, Michelle and Bob really interact from your members, and how do we start to connect that experience? Whether you use SilverCloud or not, we kind of mapped out how you can do this on your own, just to think a little bit differently around what does that member experience look like, and how do they leverage digital, and how do we start to connect that fiber so that Michelle can find what she's looking for. And yes, online account opening is super important, and it's a big part of your strategy going forward. But how do you maximize usage to it? Because it's not Field of Dreams where if you place it 7 layers deep, they're going to find it and they're going to use it. But how do you surround it? And I think that's the only thing that I would leave you with as we kind of wrap up here. Happy to take questions as well if there are any questions.
Yes, and I just want to thank you
I'm always down.
both for your time. Chris, if you'd like to ask a question, go ahead.
You check your account. Anybody I've ever met.
Chris?
We're getting paid today, I think, right?
Chris? I don't think that's a question. I did want to thank you both. SilverCloud's been a great friend of the Cooperative Credit Union Association for several years now, and you're always so willing to come and share some of this valuable information, which I think, whether they reach out to SilverCloud or not is going to be valuable in their
Absolutely
planning for how they want to address some of these issues. Again, we'll leave it open if anyone has any questions. If you'd like to drop it in the chat or you'd like to unmute yourself, please go ahead now. It's fairly typical. We don't get a lot of people.
yeah.
On the
You guys
webinar.
right up to the end of the hour.
Yeah.
But again, thank you both for your time, and thanking everyone who showed up to listen or watch the webinar. We of course appreciate your time, and we hope we made it worth your while. Jay and Amber, thank you.
Yeah, Bill. Thank you all. Thank you all for attending, and Amber's contact information is there. If you have any questions, she's such a great resource, and we're lucky to have her here.
Thank you all. Thank you, Bill, for coordinating. This was a great experience. Have
Absolutely.
a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye now.